why does it suddenly feel like your midsection is doubling in size? Even though you don't feel like you're doing anything different, even if you're eating the same way, maybe you are even eating less, you feel like you're eating super clean, you're not drinking alcohol, you're cutting out gluten, you're cutting out dairy, you're following what the influencers online maybe are sharing, but nothing is working. Here's the truth. Let's talk about the midlife midsection, because let's face it, this is probably the number one frustration that women have, especially in midlife. And this has been one of the biggest struggles for me personally. Quite honestly, my midsection, belly fat, like that's been kind of the hurdle for me my entire life. It's been the area on my body I have always felt the most insecure about. It has been the thing that has felt the hardest to change. And I've learned a lot about why the midsection specifically shifts so much when we get to the midlife health season. And it's something that I want to talk about because I think knowledge is power. And I want women to stop internalizing stories about why you're broken, why you can't figure it out, why, XYZ, insert blank, it's all your fault when it's not. There are so many things that play a role in what happens with our bodies and how it shifts, especially in midlife, especially with hormonal fluctuations, and especially when we weigh our physiology against what's going on with our habits, what's going on with our routines. How do we need to evaluate and shift and evolve? And so let's talk a little bit more about this. Nothing about this is willpower or calories or just getting older. There really are physiological shifts happening. And it changes how the body responds. And so I want to talk about the 3 big reasons why this happens, because women get very confused. I know in the beginning of my journey, I was so freaking confused. I was so tired of trying to make sense of all of the noise on the internet, what supplement I had to buy, what shot I needed to take, what regimen I needed to do, what I needed to cut out, what program mattered most. Like, it is the Wild West out there as far as what we should be doing, what we need to do. And so I want to continue to be a voice to help women understand we have physiological shifts happening. So once we know that, what actually serves us best? What actually is going to work? What actually is going to help us? What actually is going to get us to a place of feeling like we can reach our goals rather than being stuck on this massive hamster wheel of feeling like there's just 29 other supplements we're supposed to buy. And so let's talk about this. There are a couple of physiological shifts that happen in midlife. The first is progesterone. As progesterone declines, specifically in this perimenopause season when we're working our way into the menopause transition, our hormones are fluctuating all over the place. There's a lot happening as far as shifts go. When progesterone starts to decline, the nervous system becomes more sensitive to stress. And so what you need to understand about progesterone is it's our calming hormone. It's like the thing that helps us feel calm. It helps us manage stress a little bit more. It helps us feel a little bit more at ease. And as it starts to decline, especially in relation to estrogen, we feel more stress. We feel more anxiety. We feel like we can't get a grip on things. Sometimes you can feel like you're almost crawling out of your skin. That was me. I got to a point on my journey where my anxiety and my low lows and my erratic moods and my rage were so out of control. It felt like I was a completely different person. And I've learned over time, so much of that is tied to the progesterone drop off. So when you have the progesterone drop off happening, but then you pair that with the old school concept of let's just train more. Let's just do HIIT training. Let's keep under eating and going low calorie or low carb so we can hit our fat loss goals or our weight loss goals. Let's keep rushing around and living in survival mode. Let's keep sacrificing our sleep. Let's keep, the mental and emotional load all on ourselves and not ask for help. None of that works. All of that lifestyle shit has to change. Truly. It is the most profound work you have to do in midlife because the body will not tolerate it anymore, especially with hormonal shifting and especially with progesterone dropping off. So all of those things, maybe they worked in your 20s, maybe they worked in your 30s, maybe you could do it for a while and you were still seeing results. In midlife, it's over. You cannot survive with those kinds of habits anymore. It is not going to work. And that is why your body stays stuck. And that is what essentially can lead to midsection weight gain because the body will continue to shift and do survival and protection over anything else. When we think about survival mode, the body loves to store weight around the midsection because cortisol and blood sugar become more dysregulated. And with estrogen fluctuations and depending on where your body and where you physiologically carry more weight, a lot of the time that's where it shows up, especially for women. The other big thing as far as Shifting goes is muscle loss and metabolic health start to shift. So we're not only talking about hormonal changes, we're talking about muscle. We're talking about metabolic health. All of this starts to adapt and change for different reasons. When we get into this midlife transition, naturally we start to begin losing muscle mass, which is why learning how to preserve it, protect it, and build it matters. We don't need to be going balls to the wall on HIIT training. We need functional, progressive overload strength training so we can intentionally support our muscle mass. And the more muscle mass we have, the more calories we burn, specifically at rest, which essentially leads to the idea of being able to go after the midsection weight gain over time. We have to remember muscle is our metabolic currency. It can help with everything from blood sugar regulation to insulin sensitivity, strength overall, body composition, and having energy for the day, right? So this is the other side of the coin. We're looking at hormonal shifts, but we're also looking at loss of muscle. What often happens for women too, which a lot of women don't always realize, is you stop moving quite as much as you did. Maybe you lived in a busy city lifestyle. You were walking everywhere in your 20s and 30s, and then you moved to suburbia. You had a family. Now you're in your car all the time. You're sitting down for meetings all day, and you're not necessarily moving as much as you once were or as much as you think you are. That can all lead to, again, less energy output, less muscle mass, less muscle building, paired with the hormonal shifts. It's a recipe for weight gain, especially in the midsection. We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation. We have to remember, again, all of these things matter. It's never one single thing inside of the story. That's why, again, I think women specifically can always benefit from having an objective perspective when it comes to your health, because there is always a blind spot, like I've talked about before. There is always something we can shift. There is always something we can learn. And there's always something that we can move in some capacity. You know, one of the biggest hidden issues I see personally in women, especially in midlife, is blood sugar instability. Right? You're living on caffeine. You're skipping meals because you're too busy. You're under eating protein. You're cutting carbs because somebody told you needed to. You're constantly in stress. You're not sleeping enough. And this is a recipe for nothing but blood sugar instability, living in chronic stress mode, being in survival. And when that is the energy your body lives in, losing fat mass is not going to ever be the goal. The midsection is going to continue to grow. All of the habits we just talked about, this is what causes insulin spikes. It causes energy crashes throughout the day. It's what actually causes the body to store more insulin. And when you're storing insulin, you have more blood sugar rolling around in the blood. All of that is a recipe for holding on to fat mass, growing fat mass, and for women, it all ends up in our midsection. The body becomes more efficient at storing fat, especially around the belly, when we're leaning on all of these different kinds of survival mode habits. And so I want this to be the biggest takeaway for you. Your body is not broken. It is responding to the habits and the inputs that you've likely been giving it for a really long time. And so midlife is the season when you have to really start to take a specific look at what is going on. What are my habits looking like? What do I need to shift and change? How do I need to get honest? And what do I need to do to create more changes? Create more habits that actually are going to serve me. I want you to know that this is not always an easy thing, but it can be really powerful to understand the importance of looking at the full picture. You know, the other big thing inside of this conversation is how estrogen plays a role. So we talked about progesterone drop off, but what happens when progesterone drops off, the estrogen to progesterone ratio becomes really imbalanced. That can lead to all kinds of symptoms. You know, the biggest thing that women don't realize is that as estrogen begins to fluctuate and eventually declines as you get into perimenopause and menopause, the fat distribution on our body changes. Estrogen helps women store more fat in the hips, glutes, and thighs. But as estrogen drops, the body becomes more likely to store fat in the central abdomen midsection, and it can redistribute what's going on. And so that's why you might feel like, okay, my body looked like this, but now it looks like this. Why? Hormonal fluctuations are at play. But these other lifestyle factors are also a big thing to consider. The other thing with estrogen is it supports insulin sensitivity. It also impacts muscle mass and our metabolic health. And again, that picture of stress sensitivity. Estrogen is one of those massive hormones in the body that is wildly interconnected to a lot of parts of the ecosystem. And so when we're in this hormonal fluctuation season, again, that's why we have so many different symptoms crop up, including our midsection doubling in size, and we don't know why. So what is the point of this podcast? I want you to understand that when you're in a season like midlife and you're trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What do I need to change? Why does my midsection look so different? Why does my body feel different? Why do I have no energy? Why do I feel terrible? The first place you always start is evaluating the basics, the foundations. Because let's face it, we all have blind spots like I talked about. We all have different things in our lifestyle that we have to shift. What do your habits look like? What do your routines look like? How are you eating? Are you trying to build muscle through lifting weights? What does your stress look like? What does your sleep look like? Are you hydrating consistently? What do your relationships look like? What's your spiritual wellness look like? Are you unplugging enough from work? Are you constantly in survival, or are you giving yourself time to actually feel peace and down-regulated from all of the wild things that you're trying to manage every day? Again, maybe that worked for a while in your life. Midlife, it doesn't work anymore. That's a big piece. The other big piece is trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we balance this idea of hormonal fluctuations alongside the lifestyle evaluation? So I'm a huge believer in targeted testing. I'm a huge believer in really getting the data on your body, working with a knowledgeable practitioner that can unpack what's going on with your physiology and where you are at, not only from a hormonal standpoint, but also from a cortisol standpoint, a liver health standpoint, a metabolic health standpoint. Where are things like your vitamins, your minerals, your electrolytes? What does your immune system look like? What does your iron panel look like? What are things like lipids and insulin, glucose, all of these things? Everything makes a difference. And so again, the more knowledge you have, the more educated you can become about what actually is going to serve you best in this season. But the biggest thing I want to share is that the idea of your midsection doubling in midlife is not made up. There are a lot of things working against the process. Hormonal fluctuations, loss of muscle mass, metabolic health change, dipping in estrogen and progesterone, insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance, the idea of your habits and lifestyle changing, like it's a perfect storm. And so one of the things we have to do is learn, okay, how do I get more supportive for my body? How do I get more strategic? What do I need to do that's different from what I've always done? And for a lot of the women I speak to, so often it's the unlearning, letting go of the dieting, letting go of the rules, letting go of the things you've thought you've needed to do in order to be healthy, in order to target your midsection weight loss, and instead recalibrate on the picture of figuring out how do you actually work with your female physiology. That takes time. That takes intention. And that it takes working with somebody that can teach you the different steps that actually will serve you best when you think about midlife health. But above all, remember, this is not in your head. This is not made up. This is a very real thing for women in midlife. And my goal as a coach is to continue to educate about what are the things that are happening physiologically, but also what are the things we can continue to shift from a lifestyle standpoint to help you feel the best from the inside out. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.